Hello, my name is Sam Grate, and I'm the curator here at the Auburn Duesenberg Automobile Museum, and we're in today our Collection and Conservation Center. Before we get started with our tour of the place here, we'll just wait 30 seconds or so, let some more people trickle in. So thank you guys very much for joining us here yet again today. Thank you again to Hilton Head Concours for inviting us to do this live event here and to offer you guys a more behind-the-scenes look at what we do as the museum, how we take care of our cars, preserve them, and display them, and more. So without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and start. So this building was built for the museum in 2013, and it was used or built specifically for our collection volunteers that we call the pit crew, who help work on our cars. They're an all-volunteer group that have been around since the 90s at least, and they help us keep the cars in running shape, get them ready for shows, getting them ready for display, and they bring with them a large set of knowledge and expertise, which helps us as we work through Auburn's, Concours, Duesenberg's, and more cars, the 10s, 20s, and 30s specifically. So the room we're in right now is our education area where we have school groups, car club events. It's also where we start on Monday mornings when we have our pit crew here. Start off with coffee and donuts, and it also kind of doubles as an extra workspace for us as well. As you see here, we have a 1930 Packard here in the showroom area. You see as you go by at nighttime when it's lit up. Next to it here, we have a Duesenberg chassis that we are working on. We've been doing some fitting with the firewall. We have a Model J engine that's on display in the museum right now that we have fitted with this chassis. And it's a slow work in progress, acquiring parts, fitting parts, make sure everything works properly, with the idea of having a good Duesenberg Model J chassis to show people what was underneath the cars, what engineering and technology there was that you normally wouldn't see with a body on the car. Example of the Duesenberg engine is right here. We have a Duesenberg Model J engine head, dual overhead valves, straight eight cylinders, very advanced for its time. The engine produced 265 horsepower. And with this head, we've been working on just to rebuild, make sure everything's good with it, rebuild if we absolutely need to, and it'll go back in a Duesenberg once we're satisfied with it. It also has 4 valves per cylinder, 2 intake and 2 exhaust. So a very advanced engine for its time, especially for a passenger car. As we head here into our main room, we have 3 garage bays here where we work on our cars. 2 of the bays have lifts. In front of each car lift is a workstation with its own separate set of tools, and that makes it so that if we have a car that we're working on, all the parts and the tools and everything, information that we have with the car that's being worked on, it stays with that car, with that workstation, with that bay, so nothing gets mixed up. Here in the Conservation Center, we only work on museum-owned cars. We don't work on loaned cars or anybody else's. So everything in here is being worked on for display purposes, to go to car shows or concours events such as Hilton Head, or get ready for other events that the museum is partaking in. So we'll do some minor restoration work. We'll able to rebuild carburetors, work on engines. We've done an engine rebuild, some preservation and restoration work with like paint and such. Basically whatever we can try to do to help keep our cars looking good and in good running shape at the same time. So in our first bay right here, We have a 1979 International Harvester Scout. It's a Scout SSV prototype from 1979. It was one of only a few that were built, and this was one that we were getting around to get ready to go to the International Harvester Homecoming, which takes place at the plant in New Haven, Indiana. Of the few prototypes that were built and bodied, this was the nicest of those that remain. Most of them were used for crash testing. Aside from its all fiberglass body, you can tell it's a prototype because things just don't quite fit right. Seams are a little bit larger than you would expect out of a finished product. But it's essentially a Scout 2 chassis and frame, but with the prototype SSV Scout body on it. And I'll come over here and I will open the door. Go ahead and get a look on the inside. And as it's a prototype, it has no roll down windows except for just a little moon roof there, so it gets kind of stuffy in there pretty quickly when you're driving it around. It's a manual or a automatic transmission. With this Scout, it was donated to the museum in the early 1980s, and it hadn't been started or driven really since this year when we were getting it around for Harvester Homecoming Festival. So we're looking to get it running, keep it in good running shape, and use it at least yearly to go to the Harvester Festival. Over here, up on our lift, we have a 1935 Auburn sedan. This is one of what we call our education cars, in that this is one that we'll take to school groups, local car shows, take on some car tours, etc. One that will allow general visitors, kids to get inside, see what it's like to sit in there. The kids really like rolling the windows up and down instead of pushing a button. That's always fun to watch them figure that out. And this is one, as an education car, we keep running year-round specifically and out here ready to go whenever we may need it. And this is probably one of our best and most well-known cars as we take it to a lot of events. So this is a good running car. We just do the usual general maintenance, things like make sure the fluids stay fresh, make sure everything works on it electrically, and it's one that we can just take out whenever we need to, go to a car show, cruise in, etc. Having it up here on the lift too also makes it nice to look underneath the car as well, give you guys a view typically that wouldn't be seen. You got your oil pan there. It's an ex-member frame that was a patented design by the Auburn Automobile Company starting in 1929. It's got 4-wheel hydraulic brakes, 3-speed manual. Top speed for these cars back in the day was around 100 miles per hour, but I wouldn't do that today. It's just a very sturdy, a very reliable car, and one that is well used and enjoyed by the museum. Next to us here is a 1923 Buick. It was the first year for their single overhead cam, straight 6 engine. You see here. This was one that was not been running condition since the mid-1980s. It was donated to the museum last year, where we made the decision that because of its openness, it would make a really good education car, something different than just an Auburn or Accord, for example. So we're slowly working to get this back in good running shape, in good order. Well, we have started the engine a couple times, but as you do that, you'll find problems along the way. So it's just chasing things down one problem at a time. And it's one that we hope in the very near future to have out on the road as a good education car and an educational tool. It's a 3-speed manual, about 55 horsepower, and just to reiterate, it's a 1923 Buick. All right, and then back here, it's a 1931 Auburn sedan. This was the one that we recently did an engine rebuild on. New pistons, new valves, new rings, rebuilt the carburetor, rebuilt the starter, cleaned the generator, new spark plugs, new wiring for the distributor. This is another one of our education cars, and it's one that we have had out of service for a while this engine rebuild was being done. So it's one that we're really looking forward to getting back out on the road, getting kids inside to enjoy it once again. And we're getting close. We've had some water pump issues, which is why you don't see the cooling fan in the front currently. But we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. We've had it running recently, and it's done great. So we're looking forward to getting this back out on the road yet again. The 31 Auburn 31 was the most successful model year for the Auburn, selling over 33,000 cars, making it the 13th largest seller of automobiles in the United States for that year, which was pretty amazing for a small company here in Auburn, Indiana. It's a straight 8 engine, produces about 95 horsepower, 3-speed manual, and as is, it's a good cruiser at 45, 55 miles per hour. It's got wooden artillery wheels, which was an option back then. Most cars at that time were going with the wire wheels. And sometime in the 1970s, a vinyl top was put on it. But the car in the interior remains, by and large, original. All right, and then one of the last areas we'll go in. Through there is our paint booth, but it's kind of dirty right now, so we'll avoid that. But we have the opportunity and the availability to do some paint repair in our shop here if we need to. Parts washer, mineral spirits, gets oil and grease and stuff off while not affecting the material underneath. Very useful for cleaning carburetors and other car parts that are dirty, dusty, oily, etc. In here we have a transmission lift, parts to put drain oil, gas, coolant, etc. Then in here we have just a small little machining room with sandblaster, lathe, drill press, bench grinder. It's where we have our air compressor to operate the lifts. So we're able to do some machining, repair, and manufacturing here. But there are some limitations to what we can do. But by and large, for what we typically need to do, we are able to do it here, which is a bonus for this collection and for our volunteers. So that is a whirlwind tour of our collection conservation center. Cars come in and out all the time. We work on Auburn's, Accords, and Duesenbergs and anything else that might be in our museum collection, even something as unique as a '79 International Scout. And I think we'll just take a few minutes here to see if we have any pressing questions.
How many museum-ready cars do you work on each year?
All right, question, how many museum-ready cars do we work on each year? Well, each year before the next upcoming year, we try to plan out what Concours events we're going to, what shows we're going to, what cars will be needed for that show. By and large, with some exceptions, most cars will just bring out, put in fresh fluids, oil, gas, coolant, start it up, make sure everything's fine, and they're typically good to go. Sometimes there might be a little leakage here and there, but that's common with 20s and 30s automobiles. So with decent planning, we probably would go through 10 to 15 cars per year out here.
How many education cars does the museum have, and how are they used?
All right, so we have currently 4 education cars. These were donated to the museum specifically not for the collection itself, but to be used by the museum as what we call an education car. These will take to school groups, explain to kids what an Auburn is, what a Buick is, talk about the design of the car, let them get inside, honk the horn, move the windows up and down with the hand crank, which is pretty funny to watch because they're used to pushing and holding a button. Explain kind of design of the car, how these older cars worked versus cars today. Let them sit in the driver's seat, see the big steering wheel, all the pedals that just aren't there in modern cars these days. Just a way to get the kids interacted with these cars, see them running, hear them running, see them go down the road, to help kind of spur that interest in these older automobiles.
In a non-COVID year, how many visitors does the museum get, and how many of them get to access the Conservation Center?
The Conservation Center, to repeat the question, on a non-COVID year, how many visitors does the museum get per year, and how many visitors get to go in the Conservation Center? On a non-COVID year, we'll have between 45,000 to 50,000 visitors, give or take. And the Collection Conservation Center is not open to the public. This is very much a behind-the-scenes tour, which we're more than happy to present. We will let some of the public in on guided tours or by appointment or other specific circumstance. But by and large, except for the first room we started in, which has the large windows for people to see in, we don't have visitors out here.
Where is the museum located, and how is it affiliated with the Hilton Head Concours?
All right, museum is located. We're located at 1600 South Wayne Street in Auburn, Indiana. And we are affiliated with the Hilton Head Concours. We were invited to go there this year to bring the 1921 Duesenberg Model A, which was the very first of the Duesenberg passenger cars ever built. But sadly, that Concours had to cancel due to current circumstances. So in the stead, we agreed to do a series of video events on Facebook Live with the Concours, with Hilton Head, to get the people interested in the museum, get us out there a little bit, show off behind-the-scenes stuff like this, any new exhibits that we have, just to keep the social media content going in lieu of attending the Concours this year. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us. I hope this was